Hello viewers, welcome once again to Mwai's channel, a channel that aims to connect us or to bring us together to understand reality and to question reality in order for us to understand whether reality constitutes of only what we see in the material sense of reality, or whether there is a different realm of reality in what religions call the heaven or the spiritual realm of reality. In order for us to understand that, we must first of all understand our physical nature, and by understanding our physical nature, then we will understand whether man simply constitutes of the material aspect of his being, or whether there is more than the material aspect of his being. And if there is more than the material aspect of his being, whether that other aspect that is not of a material nature connect him to a different realm of reality that is different from the material sense of reality. So let us start by looking at our brain. Science tells us that the brain is the most complex object in the entire material universe. And when I talk of the material universe, I'm talking of a huge diversity indeed in terms of the extent to which we have our universe. Science tells us that the universe is so huge, is so ginormous, that the farthest object called a quark takes 13.5 billion years for its light to reach us. What I'm saying is, this universe is so huge that according to science, its diameter is 94 billion light years. When I talk of 94 billion light years, I'm talking of the period that light takes to traverse over a period of 94 billion years, traveling at a distance of, or rather a whopping distance of, or speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. That is how ginormous the material universe is. And that's not all. That material universe is not static. It is expanding at a certain speed known as the Hubble constant. So if then we are told that our brain, your brain and my brain is the most complex object in all that material universe, then it shows that our brain is amazing to behold. But let us look at the brain. According to neuroscience, again, the brain is said to weigh a mere or a meager 1.3 kilograms, and that it can fit in the palm of your hand. Yet it is the most complex object in the universe, to a point where it is also regarded as the universe between our ears. But what constitutes of this brain? The brain is said to constitute of fewer cells, and that these cells are also regarded or known by the name neurons, and that it is the neuron which has a head, it has a body, and it has dendrites, that transmit thought in an electrical form from one neuron to the other. But we are also told that these neurons, which is over 200 billion, so a brain has over 200 billion neurons. The neurons are not entirely connected intricately with each other, but that in between one neuron to the other, there is a gap known as a synapse. That synapse is the gap that determines the importance of each thought that is generated by a neuron in order, in line with its importance, it is transmitted from one neuron to the other through the synapses, whereby the clever brain produces a certain chemical that comes in as a bridge between the neurons and enables the thought to be transmitted from one neuron to the other. As a result of that, the thought is then developed and it progresses to whatever becomes of that thought. So our aim today is not to understand what happens to those thoughts or to such thoughts, because we all know, but it is to understand the complexity of the brain and to know what the brain constitutes. Again, in order to understand how complex our brain is, science tells us that the number of stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is over 200 billion stars in our galaxy alone. Furthermore, science continues to tell us that there are over 200 billion galaxies in the visible universe. Now that means that the number of stars in each of those 200 billion galaxies, which contains over 200 billion stars in each of those galaxies, is equal to about 200 billion times 200 billion. If you calculate that, the number of stars is around 27 sextillion stars, and a sextillion is 1 followed by 24 zeros. Those are the number of the stars. Now listen to this. The brain, which constitutes or has over 200 billion neurons or cells, way surpasses the number of the stars in the universe through the synaptic potential. The ability to process thought. The ability to process thought through the synapses or the synaptic connection is so huge. It is almost unlimited. And as a result of that, man's ability to process thought is almost unlimited. That is how powerful your brain and my brain and every human being's brain is wonderful and complex to behold. But that is not all. Science goes on to tell us that our brain has something that is special and that is different from even the closest primate. And when I talk about the closest primate, I'm talking of the chimpanzee, which science tells us has 98% similarity in the brain to that of a human being. And that the 2% difference makes all the difference that we see between a chimpanzee and a human being. The 2% difference is our ability to process thought. It is our brain's ability to connect to its memory, to your memory, to my memory. And it is through our memory that we are able to remember. And what that means is that when I meet with my friend, based on the last time that we met, I'm able either to instantly recall him and know that this is John, or even hear his voice and recall the voice. Or it may take a while for me to remember the person based on the last time that we met with him. How does that work? How that work? This is how that works. When it works through the senses. And we are told by science that man constitutes of 5 major senses. One of them being the sense of sight, sense of sound, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of smell, and sense of odor. And if we take the example of the sense of sight, when you think that you see something, it is not the eye that sees. All the eye does through the pupil is to allow the colors of the object at hand to enter the pupil and go to the back of the eyeball, where the back of the eyeball, it is connected to nerves. And we are told that these nerves are over 1 million in numbers. So those nerves picks up the colors that has been transmitted to the back of the eyeball by the pupil and changes those colors into electrical signals almost instantaneously. And then they transmit that electrical signal to the back of the brain, to a place called, or an area called, the occipital lobe. The occipital lobe receives the electrical signals from the optic nerves and convert those signals into an image. But so far, up to that point, the brain does not know what that image is. The clever occipital lobe then consults the memory bank of man and does what we call computer matching. It matches the image at hand with all the images that is stored in the memory bank. And based on how long you have encountered that image before, you are able to instantaneously recall the person. For example, as I say, if it's John, this is John, that is John. So that is how the brain works. And that aspect of the memory bank is the constitution of the 2% difference between the brain of a human being and the brain of a chimpanzee. But you can see with that difference that the dissimilarities between a chimpanzee and a human being are almost like day and night. like life and death. The difference is so big, it's so huge. And as a result of that difference, your brain becomes the most complex object in the entire material universe. So, does that mean that the brain is everything? And I will say no, Asha, the brain is not everything. For the brain is not the originator of thought. For if it was the originator of thought, if the brain of man was very cleverly, was very surgically removed from or detached from the other nerves of the body, it would still be able to process thought. But that is not the case. The moment the brain is detached from the rest of the body, it ceases to think, it ceases to process thought. That means that the brain is not everything. And that also implies that the mind, which, as we saw in the other videos, in the other recordings, is what processes thought, that mind is not a part of the brain for several reasons. One of the reasons is that if it was, we would have no hope that when the man dies, his spirit goes to heaven. There will be no hope that a blind person or any person with any form of disability is as a human being as those with all the aspects of their 5 common senses. So we shall continue with this discussion in my next video, because time is not of the essence, my fellow listeners. And at this juncture, I would once again appeal to you to continue liking this video, to continue subscribing this video, and to continue sharing this video with like-minded, with your friends, family, so that they can also get insights just like you are getting these insights. And also I would urge you to write comments, ask questions. In other words, I would ask you to come and let us sit down and reason together. In the meantime, adios, amigo.